We harvested over a dozen heads of green cabbage last night. Now it's time to make sauerkraut. We do this once a year near the end of July and make enough sauerkraut to last a year. When you cut the cabbages from the plant, you might experience them cracking like this one did. No worries, if the cabbage is really turgid and you cut the end off, it can release the tension and the cabbage will crack like this. It's really not a problem. To prep the cabbages, simply remove all the outer layers that may have bug bites on them or a little bit of dirt. Now quarter them. And you could slice out the core of the cabbage as well. We don't remove it because our cabbage is pretty young and tender. Now they're ready for the kraut cutter. Years ago, Dan and I were lucky enough to find this kraut cutter at an auction sale, and we just love it. Hopefully you have access to one, or maybe you could find one on Etsy. I also found a terrific Canadian company that offers brand new shredders, and I'll put the link to that below. The bowl weighs a little over a pound, so we weigh out 2 pounds of shredded cabbage for each batch. 2 pounds will make about 1 quart of sauerkraut, and we pack our sauerkraut in 2-quart jars. So we do 2 batches to fill a 2-quart jar. The most basic cabbage recipe is cabbage and salt. Those are the only 2 ingredients, right? And the salt is supposed to be about 2% of the weight of the cabbage. So the cabbage is 2 pounds, which is about 907 grams. That would mean about 18 grams of salt to 2 pounds of cabbage at 2%. We actually use 15 to 16 grams of salt, and we've never had a problem, but you decide, 15 or 18 grams of salt. Rather than measure for each batch, we made a mark on a used pill bottle, and that's 15 to 16 grams of salt. Make sure to use a salt with no additives like iodine, because that can mess with the fermentation process. See the comment section below for suggestions. We also add a crushed up dried hot pepper, and we add a clove of garlic to each batch. After adding all your ingredients, it's just a matter of stirring them all together and making sure the garlic and hot pepper is well distributed throughout the cabbage, along with the salt. And the salt is what makes the cabbage start to wilt. It starts to draw the moisture out of the cabbage. You'll feel it getting wilty, and you'll feel more and more moisture as you're mixing. When it's nice and limp, you can start kind of rolling it in your hands, dropping each roll into your jar. There's no need to crush the cabbage or squeeze the juice out of it. The salt will draw the juice that's in the cabbage out and make your brine for you. Just keep rolling and filling. So the first batch is in the jar, and now we're starting round 2. So again, there's 4 total cups of cabbage in a 2-quart jar. So we're adding a little bit of hot pepper. This is Peruvian purple, a clove of garlic, and we're using up last year's leftover garlic, a perfect use for it. And then the 15 grams of salt. And mix. So again, just kind of making sure that garlic gets distributed amongst all of the cabbage. Tossing while the salt helps it go limp and draws the moisture out of it. Breaking up the bigger pieces of pepper and the clumps of garlic. Continue to toss and mix while the salt pulls the juices out and makes the cabbage limp. When it feels limp enough, you can start rolling it into a ball to prepare to drop it into your jar. After completely filling the jar, firmly press down on the cabbage to extract the juice and to get all of the cabbage down into the jar and submerged under the brine. To keep the cabbage submerged, we repurposed some plastic lids, folding them and then releasing past the neck of the jar. But after all we've learned about plastics and the potential for leaching into our food, I would recommend purchasing glass weights, and I'll include a link to that down below. The ferment for making sauerkraut is an anaerobic process, so you need all the cabbage down beneath the brine. The final step is to clean the jar and put a film of plastic wrap over the mouth. There's about 1/2 inch of brine above the cabbage. We set our jars on top of a refrigerator so the temperature stays between 70 and 75 degrees. Cooler temperature means the fermentation process will take longer. We let them ferment for 7 to 10 days, and the longer you let them ferment, the more tangy the sauerkraut will get. We put them on rough tote lids just in case they overflow during the fermentation process. It's been 7 days and it's time to stop the fermentation and prepare our sauerkraut for storage. You can see a lot of the brine has been reabsorbed by the sauerkraut at this point. Before beginning the process, we sterilize the number of lids that we'll need along with a bread knife. Then we remove the plastic and clean any brine residue off the outside of the jar. With a knife, just simply remove the lid. Then make sure all the cabbage is tamped down, kind of an even surface. With a paper towel or napkin, remove any of the residue around the neck of the jar. It'll take a few swipes to get it clean. Next, take a moistened piece of paper towel and just wipe around the mouth of the jar where the ring attaches, especially to remove any salt residue that might be there. The salt will make the rings start to corrode, and it'll make it very difficult for you to remove the ring. When you've thoroughly cleaned it, now take a dry piece of paper towel and just go around the mouth to make sure it's nice and dry. And finally, top it off with your sterilized lid. And again, dry the top so as not to encourage any rust. And fasten your ring. Tighten the lid as much as you can, and then when you put the jar in the fridge, the contents will cool down and cause the lid to seal. Make sure you label. And in the refrigerator it goes to join all the other beautiful jars of sauerkraut. So this is still 2022, just finishing up last year's sauerkraut. I wanted to show you what this looks like up close. Look at that deliciousness. And of course you can always just eat it straight out of the jar. So good. I hope you enjoyed this video and that you're ready to go make your own sauerkraut. Go for it. Please like and subscribe, and we'll see you again next time.